Well, how is it going, everybody, and welcome back to TRF. My goal on this channel is to help you guys become better bass anglers with every single video that you watch. And as you'll notice, we're in a little bit of a different scenario today. We are not out on the lake or on the pond. We are here in my apartment filming this video. And so my goal for this video is to show you guys some of the biggest bass I've caught on my channel and teach you what I learned in both catching these fish and editing the video later that I think can help you guys catch big bass as well. I do have to mention though, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an awesome online web-based learning platform that allows creative people like you and me to get together and advance our creative skills and knowledge. More of that to come later on in the video. So you guys may or may not know, but I have been doing this YouTube thing for a long time. I think I'm approaching 8 years, maybe 9, I gotta do the math again, but at least 8 years making YouTube videos on a fairly consistent basis. And so that's really, I wouldn't say that's my entire bass fishing journey because I've been bass fishing my whole life, but really started bass fishing hardcore end of middle school, beginning of high school, and then started to know what I was doing per se, as I got to the beginning of high school, and that's when I started my YouTube channel on my sophomore year of high school. So I think, yeah, 8 years ago. And so basically all of my big bass, besides 1 or 2 or 3 throughout the years, I've had the camera on. And so I'm gonna be able to go through most of the big bass on my channel. I left out a few because they didn't really teach anything. They were kind of redundant. You know, a jig fish catch under a dock, basically the same no matter what kind of dock you're fishing. And so I chose fish catches on purpose to hopefully teach you guys some things about how to become better bass anglers. So we're gonna get the screen recording up and we're gonna go video by video showing you guys how I caught these big fish. And of course I'll have them linked below in the video description in case you wanna see the full videos, because most of these videos have more fish catches in them than I'm gonna go over. They have more exact instruction for that fish catch and kind of the weather and water conditions in which I observed to catch that fish. I'm not gonna go over all that. This is gonna be a super quick big bass teaching type of video. So the first catch that I wanna go into is my top fishing lure for during and after the rain. I'm gonna kind of read the titles for all these videos before I show them to you guys. And this is a fish that I caught on a frog right after a storm when I was up in New York on the St. Lawrence River this summer. And you may think, St. Lawrence River, that's smallmouth territory. Well, it's also got some really, really good, healthy largemouth. So with all of these, I'm gonna give a little bit of intro like I did there. I'm fishing a frog, shallow, around grass. I might stop and start the video here and there, but I really just wanna show the fish catch and then talk about what I did in that fish catch in order to land that fish. So right here, I'm talking about the storm, the intro, and then I bet you I got the fish catches right here. So here is the big fish catch from New York. I get fishy vibes from this place, man. I get real fishy vibes from this place. Go on him! Holy cow! Holy cow, that's a big one! Holy smokes! Holy smokes! Holy cow! My gosh, it's a big New York largemouth! Holy cow! Whoa! I literally watched him eat it. I saw the frog was still outside of his mouth. I gave it like 1 more second as he swam with it. I saw it disappear and I set the hook and look where it's at now. Oh, look at that thing. He's got it so deep he's bleeding. All right, so the one thing that I learned from that fish catch right there, and I actually talked about it in the video right there, is that I was fishing a scenario where you have shallow water, so of course the fish are not gonna have to shoot up from super deep water to eat your frog, but I've also got clear water. That shallow grass has filtrated the water so it's clear, and so if a fish does eat it, I can probably see that fish with my eyes, of course with polarized sunglasses on, I can see that fish eat my lure. And so what I said is that I saw the fish, I didn't see him come up, but I saw the bite happen, as of course when you're frog fishing, you should always be watching your frog or any topwater for that matter. And when I got that bite, I saw that the fish did not have the entire frog in its mouth. And so if you guys have ever fished a topwater frog, you know that the hooks are sitting like this on top of the bait. And so if the fish does not have the entire thing, those hooks are not gonna poke out and get that fish inside the mouth. You're gonna pull the frog away. That is why the hookup ratio on a frog for most people is generally low, because they are setting the hook right when they get the bite. And oftentimes the fish, even though you can't see it, like I could in this video, it doesn't have the frog all the way down its mouth. I was able to see in this really cool situation, the fish eat the lure, not have the whole thing, just have it by like the back half, and then I watched before I set the hook. It all happened in a second and a half, but I had that patience to watch that frog disappear in its mouth, which is the coolest thing to see, and then I set the hook. So I'm gonna show it one more time. And watch what happens. It's like a little stutter step that I almost have before I set the hook. There, and then I set the hook. So I went down to set the hook, and let me see if I can show it again. It's kind of hard to tell. Right there. I gave him about a second and a half to eat that frog, and then I set the hook, because if I had set it any earlier, I would have lost that fish, and that was about a 5.5 pounder, which for New York largemouth, that's almost like a 9.5 pounder here in Texas. I mean, you can catch 6 pounders in New York, but the giants like that are definitely hard to find. So that is fish catch number 1. So the second bass catch of this list is actually not one of my biggest smallmouth. I've got plenty of smallmouth bigger than this one, but I kind of wanted to include it in this fish catch video and not put it in the craziest bite video, because there's something cool to learn from this video. So this is actually a video that I filmed in conjunction with ND Yak Angler, one of the coolest YouTubers out there, really nice guy, and I got the pleasure of collaborating with him. And so of course I start every video with some B-roll. We drive around, catch some fish. Let me turn the quality up to 1080p. I make this cast right here, and watch what happens.
Ah, dang it. Eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it. That was so cool. That was so cool. That was so cool. Holy smokes. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Yes. Yes. No, I think we know. That guy's gonna be, huh? That's a 19, yeah.
So that catch right there taught me one thing, and that is to never give up on a cast. I made a bad cast, as you saw there. Thought, you know what, I'll reel it back in. And in this clear water here in Minnesota, fishing a whopper plopper, I brought it all the way back to the kayak, and I think I'll talk about the kayak in a second. I think it adds to a little bit of the stealth factor that a bass boat might not have. But sometimes you're gonna make a cast out there, it's a bad cast, or you just kind of feel like the area is not very good, and you're gonna reel your bait in very, very quickly in order to get the next cast out. And I would say that most of the time, that's not a bad idea, especially if you are target fishing. But if you are in an area that's got tons of fish, maybe pressured fish, I would recommend, even on a bad cast, sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, sometimes reel your lure in all the way back to the boat, especially if you're fishing in dirty water. Reel your lure in and retrieve it normally all the way back to the boat, because I had that fish following my lure, like I said, with a pike for like 8 or 10 feet. And I said, eat it, eat it, eat it. And the fish finally nosed up on it and ate it. And if I had looked away, given up on the cast and reeled in, I would have totally missed that fish. So that's the lesson for this fish right here. 19-inch smallmouth, probably, I don't know, 3.5, 4 pounds. But really, really cool experience to get to see that, and I wish the cameras were able to capture it better. So fish catch number 3 is one of my favorites of all time, and definitely one of the biggest ones that I have on the channel. It's an 8-pounder caught at night. This fish, I believe, was caught at like 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the morning as a part of my 24-hour fishing challenge. I will have that video linked below. It is exactly what you think it is. I went fishing for 24 hours straight. And at 2 a.m. we caught this fish here in a green light. Now what a green light is, it's an underwater light that, in my knowledge, kind of became widely used in the saltwater, side of things. So for trout, redfish, snook, you want to attract minnows and plankton and everything to your dock. That way your family can enjoy catching them. And those lights at night turn on, and for some reason a fluorescent green attracts the most biological life sources to the area, which of course drags in the most game fish as well. And so the same thing applies in freshwater. In this lake here called Lake LBJ, just west of Austin, Texas, has tons of awesome green lights at night. And we were catching them on a jerkbait, we're catching them on a fluke, on a chatterbait. But I thought to myself, you know what, those big fish, people fish the lights all night, they see a bunch of lures. I'm gonna throw a little tiny hair jig. I've never caught a big largemouth on it, but I feel like in those lights, it imitates a little minnow. So I tied on the Outcast Tackle Fighter Fly in the shad color. And let me zoom on ahead here to the fish catch. This video is pretty cool. I actually explain exactly what fishing these green lights are. That's bass. Oh my god. So it jumped right there. I said that's a 10-pounder. So I'm gonna scoot ahead a little bit. Of course, on 8-pound fluorocarbon with a hair jig, I fought that very, very slowly. But we get it back to the boat right here.
Yes! Yes! Dude, look at that. Woo! Let's go!
Dude, that's a G.
Let's go!
That's an 8.
Yes! On the hair jig, dude.
And so as you can see on the right side of the screen there is a green light. That's the exact one. Actually, there's two next to each other. I cast to the one on the other side of it. But just a really cool learning experience that big bass don't always need big lures. People DM me on Instagram asking, how do I catch the biggest bass in my pond? There's two ways. Three ways technically. One, fish slower. So fish the same lures as everybody else, but just fish them extremely slowly. Two, downsize. So downsize to a drop shot, Ned rig, anything finesse. I downsized in the same lights that everybody else was fishing to a small, tiny hair jig, really unconventional lure for this area, especially of Texas at this time of the year, but it caught the biggest fish of the night and really one of my biggest fish of the year at 8 pounds. And then of course the third one is fish big things, giant worms, big jigs, swim baits, glide baits, big paddle tail swim baits. That's the 3 ways to catch big bass. But the lesson here is that downsizing usually means more fish, but sometimes it can catch that one fish that evades everyone else's lure. Big bass fish catch number 4 is going to be my PB smallmouth bass. People ask all the time, what's your PB bass? This is my PB smallmouth bass. I'm gonna go into my PB spotted bass, and then we're gonna go into my PB largemouth bass to end the video. Of course, you gotta cover all the PBs if it is a how to catch big bass video. In this one here, all my PBs were caught very, very differently. One was topwater, one was in current. I guess current was the same on 2 of them. Current on a jig, and one was current on a bed with a tiny little swim bait. And so I wouldn't say it takes the cake for most memorable fish catch because I've caught a lot of smallmouth doing this thing, but the fact that it was way bigger than I thought it was definitely makes this one of the coolest fish catches of my career. So got the screen record going. Let's play the full, almost the full fish catch, and then show you guys or tell you how I caught this thing.
Is it a PB?
I think it's a PB.
All right, so I'm gonna stop the video right here. I probably skipped a few little portions there just because it's about a 2.5, 3 minute long fish catch, which for bass is pretty dang long. There's a few things. Actually, you know what? I haven't even shown you the end of the fish catch yet. You wanna see how big it is? Here we go, it's in the net.
That's a fatty.
That is a fatty. It weighed 6.4 pounds. Crazy smallmouth bass. The thickness of the fish up there is nuts. But I want to go into a few things that I did wrong with this fish catch. I probably shouldn't have landed this fish. There were things that I could definitely do better with this fish catch that I think would have eliminated any potential of losing him. The first thing, of course, crazy fish catch because I'm using the flogger. If you guys don't know what a flogger is, it is a plexiglass cone that you look through the water to see bedding smallmouth bass. Pretty cool. I'll have a video on that I'll link below. But of course, I got the fish to bite when I'm laying down, as you see there. And then, of course, the fish starts to fight. And one thing that I don't know why I did this, I left the boat on spot lock, which means, in order to keep ourselves in this really strong wind, and you can't quite see it in the camera, really strong current. I mean, it was, if you were to take off spot lock, your boat would drift very, very quickly. And so I kept the boat on spot lock, which means that the trolling motor is anchoring us via GPS, and any wind or waves, whatever, the boat doesn't move. The boat stays right there, which is great for catching the fish. But for half the fish catch, as you can see right here, I'm basically hand stripping my drag in order to keep up with that fish and let drag out, because the fish, of course, is going down current. It's using its strength as a big smallmouth bass as well as the strength of the current to try to break that line. And so you'll see me here in a second, once Rob shows the underwater footage, I've made my way to the back of the boat to kind of take away 20 feet of line that fish has taken in. But I still have the boat on spot lock. And so I'm fighting the fish on the back deck, and then I move the boat back to the front, get off spot lock, and the fish takes me back up current. So the biggest thing I would say in current situations, even just big bass in general, if you're in a bass boat or a kayak, try to follow that fish. Don't let the fish take control of the situation. You need to take control of the situation. So I didn't do a good job of that. As you can see here, the fish is fighting its way back under the boat this way, which means that it's going right near the propeller, the bottom of the boat that's probably a little bit scratched up from rocks and gravel, the power poles. Lots of things could go wrong if that fish takes me back this way. Luckily, the fish stayed deep enough and I was able to turn the boat back around. The fish came back down current and I was able to net the fish. But again, a few learning things there. Follow the fish, make sure you're in control of the situation if you can. Use a net, which I did. My buddy gave me some trash for it, but use a net. If you have spot lock on your boat, take it off when you are catching those big fish, because I could have even had the fish take a weird run, get my line in the trolling motor propeller, and snap him off. So a lot of things that could have gone wrong. Luckily, that didn't. So rolling right along, I think we have 2 or 3 more fish catches on this video, and I'm gonna try to get through them real quick. But before we do that, I gotta talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. Now, Tyler, I'm a creative person. I like making logos, and I like editing photos, and I like starting my own business. So what's the best way that I can kind of fast track or advance my skills and knowledge in order to become my own boss, per se, my own YouTuber, my own entrepreneur, whatever you want to do? Skillshare is the answer to that question. Skillshare, like I mentioned, is an online learning platform that is full of tons of instructional courses, most of them being under 60 minutes in length, which can even fit into my schedule as a busy creative person. And those classes are taught by acclaimed teachers. They are high quality, and of course, the information in them allows you to grow in your skills and knowledge as a creative person, no matter what area of the creative sphere you're in. A class that I've been taking in order to help design better logos is a class called Creating Type with Draplin, creating word marks that work. And so this guy here, as I talked about in my last video, he actually, his curriculum was used in one of my college courses that I paid tons of money for at Texas A&M, and you can get the same thing. The same teacher, Aaron Draplin, that showed me in college how to make awesome logos, is also on Skillshare and can show you guys how to do the same thing. Now you're probably looking at me and saying, Tyler, these classes sound great, you know, becoming a graphic designer, a video producer, starting my own YouTube channel, my own business. It all sounds great and all, but 1, I don't have the time. I already talked about that, they're pretty dang short classes. And 2, I don't have the money. You know, educational courses and workshops, those are expensive, and are they really worth the money? Well, the good thing is, Skillshare is stinking cheap. The premium version of Skillshare, which gets you access to every single course on the Skillshare site, is literally under $10 a month, which is just crazy. But the even crazier thing is that the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description below and also pinned to the comment section get a free trial membership of Skillshare. So there's literally this many things. 0 things to lose. So if you are listening right now and you want to start your own business but are kind of unsure about the steps to take to get there, they have a course on the website for that, which is called Make a Living as an Artist, Finance and Business. And if you, just like me, want to create awesome YouTube videos, you need an intro. And they have a class for that as well, called Grab Your Audience, Create Enthralling Intros for your videos. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. It is because of sponsors like Skillshare and others on my channel that allow me to do what I do for a living. And thank you guys for watching the ads and of course supporting the companies that support my channel. That's really the best thing you can do. Of course, buying merch is important, but also supporting and interacting with the companies that I have sponsoring me are definitely the best ways to help out the channel and to help it grow and be successful. But I say we hop on to the next fish catch and talk about what makes this one unique and what you guys can learn from it. The next fish catch is going to be one of the best, if not the best, tournament fish catches I ever had, and that was the big fish that I caught at Sam Rayburn to qualify Garrison and I for the national championship. So we're going to show the full fish catch, then we're going to talk about how I caught it. This one's going to be a lot quicker of a little sequence.
Big, dude, big. Jeez. Tyler. Yes! That's pretty. Woo! Dude, that's a. My last cast with this ink. Thank you, Lord.
Oh my God, power pill's down. Dude, that's like a, what is that?
That's a 7.5.
7?
So that was about a 7.5 pounder to qualify us for the national championship. So pretty incredible and important fish. But one of the things that I loved about this fish catch that's different than a lot of my other ones is that it was in super, now I wouldn't say super dirty water. Maybe the water clarity was 6 inches. A lot of my other big bass come out of clear water, and I'll talk about clear water. But dirty water presents a different situation because you have to fish, generally, at least when the fish are not biting moving lures, you gotta fish slower. And so that's the one thing that I took away. There's 2 things that I took away from this fish catch. One is that I worked a weightless soft plastic very slowly and literally made 5 or 6 casts around an area. And you'll see right here where my mouse is on the screen, that fish came out of a little clump of flooded, looks like a flooded little bush or something. And I made like 3 casts at it and finally made one more last ditch effort cast at that bush. And that's when I was rewarded with that big fish. So that's thing number 1 that I learned, is that in dirty water, you have to make more casts at a specific target that you can see in the water. I don't care if it's above the water or below the water. Fish could still live there. They just may need a few extra times to see your lure in order to actually find it and eat it. The second thing that I learned is that I kept my rod tip up for almost the entire cast. And that's generally a bad idea. If you're fishing for fish in open water, you want to set the hook up, fight the fish for a little bit, and then move your rod tip down if that fish starts to come up, because you don't want that fish to jump and shake its head. And putting your rod tip down generally keeps the fish pinned better on basically any type of lure. But in this situation, I had so many trees and logs and bushes around that I didn't want that fish to take me into those sticks, of course, to get me stuck, and I would lose that fish or break him off. And so I made the subconscious decision over years of bass fishing to set the hook high and keep winding that fish until he got close to the boat and I could feel him start to jump. Luckily, this fish didn't jump far away from the boat, and so keeping the rod tip high worked very well. But I could feel that fish digging, trying to get back down to where it lives in that wood, in that grass on the bottom of the lake. But keeping that rod tip up allowed me to catch that fish and get it in the boat. The next fish catch actually comes from the same exact trip, but the day before. So this was pre-fishing for that same Sam Rayburn tournament, and it was this fish here and a few other small ones, or keeper-sized fish, that clued us into how many fish were in this singular area of flooded trees. Now this fish catch was on a moving bait. They were eating a moving bait in practice a lot better than they ate a moving bait in the tournament. I had to slow down with the weightless soft plastic in the tournament to catch the bigger fish of the day. But on the practice day, it was more cloudy, it was more windy, and it was more rainy. And so we had a lot better time throwing moving baits up shallow. As you'll see here from screen recording, I mean, it is rainy. I said the audio sounds bad. And then I explain in this video, I'll go into more detail about where this fish was. But let me just play the fish catch for you. That yes meant a lot because I had an absolutely horrible practice. We found this area, I caught a big one, and I thought, you know what, there's probably a big school of fish here. Turns out I was right, but it was this fish right here that clued us in to the bigger fish or around those bigger bushes that are flooded. So if you kind of, go back on the fish catch here real quick, you can see where I cast, which was right next to, right here where my mouse is on the screen. Hopefully you can see that. That is where I made that cast and caught the big fish right on the outside of it. And so I was able to pattern from this fish. Now what pattern means is you take a fish catch, or usually 2 or 3, you notice all the similarities between how you caught that fish, where you caught it, how fast you were retrieving, what lure you were throwing, and you look around your areas, I don't care if it's a pond, a lake, a river, and you look for the exact same situations in order to duplicate what you just did. And so this fish here helped me do that a ton in the tournament the next day, in which we of course qualified for the national championship. Now the other thing that I learned about this catch is that you can boat flip big fish on relatively light gear as long as you have the technique, right? I'm gonna make a video about how to boat flip fish this spring as I start catching more big fish up shallow. But it's really all about hand placement on the rod, using the momentum of the fish and making sure it does not have its head down when you try to swing that fish in the boat. You have to make sure that the head is up, and of course you have the fish hooked well. Didn't exactly know how big this fish was. That is why I boat flipped him. It was 6.5 pounds, which definitely wasn't smart to boat flip on a 6'10" medium heavy, but it showed me that I have the gear possible to do it. I just have to know the technique well enough and of course apply it. That way I don't break my equipment, because I don't want you guys breaking your equipment either. I just know that if you do it right, it's possible to boat flip big fish. So this fish here, as you'll see, is pretty dang big. It's one of my biggest fish of 2019, and it was a dock fishing catch with a jig. Now, I filmed quite a few dock fishing videos this summer in Minnesota. Those were mostly related to skipping and swimming the jig around the docks. This video here is more of like a structure dock sort of thing, where they had brush piles out in front of the dock, as I'll explain here in a second. Let me get the fish catch up on the screen, and we will show you guys what it's all about. Giant 8 pounder.
Yes, boys!
Woo!
There's
Let's
one
go!
What did I tell you on the white float too? Oh my gosh!
Oh my goodness! Eating the jig! Oh,
Yes.
So that fish right there, like I said, 7.5 or 8 pounds. Pretty cool catch, because I'll kind of go back on the video and you can tell that I skipped the jig underneath the dock, but I did not catch that fish way in the back of the dock. I caught that fish, as you'll see here. I had done, I don't know, 10 or 15 movements of the rod, which means that jig moves 4 to 6 inches. I had moved it probably 5 to 8 feet out from the dock. And that's when I started to feel some brush down there, as my buddy told me there was. Because he had also caught big fish on this dock before too, and he knows that the dock owners had either a rock pile or some kind of brush pile. Maybe it was just random debris that was down there on the bottom that was out from the dock a little bit. So I cast past it underneath the dock and then retrieved my lure over it. And as soon as I got into that thick stuff, that's when that fish bit. One thing I did wrong on this fish catch was, actually, it wasn't necessarily wrong. I didn't set the hook as high as I had hoped to. With a jig under docks, it's kind of iffy on hook sets because you don't want to break your line, and so you want to set the hook down a little bit. But in most situations, you want to set the hook almost completely straight up, if not, at a little bit of an angle. This fish here was a little bit too much of an angle, and so I'm going to show 2 fish catches real quick from way back in the day when I set the hook almost down. I didn't even set the hook up at all, and I was lucky to land these fish. Well, the one key from these 2 fish, they're big, but don't do this. Set the hook up, don't set the hook down. I'm not sure where I learned this from or what video I watched to set the hook like this. It was probably just my natural, muscle movement, but don't set the hook like this. Why, Tyler? Why did you do that? Because look, I lifted my jig up and I got the bite when I lifted the jig up. I literally should have just continued that lift and set the hook, but instead I dropped my rod tip, which is just not a great idea because that fish could drop the jig. I don't even care if I'm bed fishing, if I'm just regular fishing. You feel that bite, you drop it as fast as I did, that fish is oftentimes gonna just drop that jig and not bite it again. Luckily, I got the fish, and of course it was a stinking 6 pounder or something like that, but that was definitely not the best hook set. And then I think this one here, which was an old video, June 5th, 2014. That is crazy. This fish catch right here, you'll see I also set the hook pretty dang low. That's just not a good hook set angle. Don't do that. On to the next one. So this big bass here was caught at Clear Lake during Garrison and I's college tournament that we had out there. Really cool experience to fish Clear Lake, which is if you know tactical bass, and legendary bass fishing lake out there on the West Coast. And the fish were I don't know, they were kind of like post-spawn-ish. Most of the fish that were caught, especially the winners of the tournament, caught them all offshore on grass. Most of the fish were pretty dang skinny. But this fish here that we caught was on a bed, and it wasn't quite ready to be caught for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours that day. So we kept returning, and this was actually the third time that we had returned to this fish. And I had tried everything on this fish. I'm talking jigs, swim baits, a white rage crawl on a spot remover jig head, shaky head, fluke, really everything I've tried on this fish. And the only thing that she would even be interested in was a drop shot. But I realized the second time checking on this fish that day is that my boat was blocking off the area where that fish, in case she gets spooked off the bed, can leave to go get some confidence, as I call it, and then come back to the bed to get back to defending the nest. I was blocking off her exit, and so she was kind of like confused. You know, every bass on a bed, I'll talk about this in a bed fishing video, every bass on a bed has an exit path that you do not want to block off with your body if you're bank fishing, with your shadow if the sun is going down, or with your bass boat. You want to make sure that fish has free reign to leave and come back as it chooses. So as soon as I moved the boat farther out and not closer to the shore, she had full range to go out and back around, kind of do a loop back to the bed. And as soon as she got back to the bed, right when we moved the boat, she ate the drop shot. So check it out. Got him, got him, got him. No, get away from the rocks, get away from the rocks. Get away from the rocks, come on, come on, come on. She ate at the mouth, dude, she got it. Big one, big one, big one. Oh. Yes! Woo! Big one. Oh! Yes! In the mouth, too! Got her.
I don't even know if it's on.
It is. Woo-hoo-hoo. Oh, that's giant. So that fish right there helped us at least do a little bit better than we were going to in the tournament. It definitely wasn't our best tournament, but the one key that I have about that one, besides not blocking off the exit path for that fish, is stay consistent. Bed fish sometimes are hard to catch. They are finicky. They see a lot of other lures, and so if you follow all the steps that I'll talk about in my bed fishing videos this spring and in past ones, you'll be well equipped to catch bed fish. But it's still a mental thing of, I've been fishing for this fish for an hour, it's not biting, am I doing something wrong? Stay persistent, because oftentimes that next cast, that next lure change is going to be what catches you that fish. So my last fish catch, and the one that you've probably all been waiting for, actually now that I'm filming this, I realized that I skipped the PB spotted bass. Don't really have time to film it today. Caught on a finesse jig and some current. I guess the same thing applies to the PB smallmouth bass that I caught. Make sure that you are following that fish, that you are in control, and that you are keeping it out of any kind of cover, just like the fish that I caught on Sam Rayburn that I had to keep the rod tip up. Combination of those two was my PB spotted bass. But now we are getting to my PB largemouth bass. As you can see in the title, it is a 10-pound bass, or pretty dang near close to it. I kind of call it a 10-pounder. I was fishing at a private pond at the camp that I worked at, and was filming a normal video until this happened.
Camera wasn't on, but I think I have a 12-pounder, y'all. I think I have a 12-pounder. Holy. Oh my goodness. Do not knock it off. Do not get off. Do not get off. Yes! Yes! Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I have a new personal best, y'all. This is my new personal best. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I gotta get a scale. I gotta get a scale. I don't know how big this is. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. Oh, 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 oh. Oh my. Look at the eyes of that fish. Oh my. Oh my.
And so I'm going to stop the clip right here when you see the spook in that fish's mouth. Of course, it's the topwater walking bait, and you might be able to notice, if you're familiar with spooks, that is not the hook that generally comes on really any topwater walking bait. That is a heavy wire EWG hook. And I thought to myself, you know what, if there's big fish in this pond, it doesn't really hurt that much to throw bigger size treble hooks on there, because I don't want that fish to be able to pull my hooks out of its mouth and kind of bend them or break the barbs, as big fish tend to do, especially when you're throwing a heavy action rod in 50 or 65 pound braid, as I was throwing here. And so that's the biggest thing that I learned. You have to watch the rest of the video in the link in the description, but the biggest thing that I learned is that if you're fishing for big bass, upgrade your terminal tackle. I don't care if it's a swim bait, a Texas rig, a crankbait, topwater. If you can, and you know you're going for big ones, don't take the risk and fish little tiny finesse thin wire hooks. Yes, you may get the hook into the fish's mouth more easily, but you're gonna have a lot better chance of losing that fish or breaking them off than you are going to have on tackle like this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I probably had to skip quite a few big bass that were on my channel. Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I love making YouTube videos, and I thought that I would sit down and do a little reaction video. So thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. If you guys want to see more reaction videos like this, I've got a few ideas for ones that I could do on my channel and YouTube fishing as a whole. But I love this kind of content. I love just going back and reminiscing. That's one of the cool things about YouTube, is that I get to film all of my fishing journeys, which means that I never have to just tell stories anymore. I tell stories on my video camera. So kind of an encouragement to you guys. Even if you're not planning on making a YouTube channel, go get yourself a cheap GoPro camera and just record your adventures with your buddies, because trust me, it is worth it to have that stuff documented, especially when you catch big ones like this one. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time on TRF.